Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for stopping by yet again. This particular video will be taken up by the changes in the Friendly Nations visa specifically. There's another visa, a new one for teleworking that's been introduced, and I'm going to discuss that too, but I'll put that in a separate video. So let me just begin by saying that this visa, the Friendly Nations visa, is one that I know many of you have been interested in and many of you have been planning to use as your means of coming here to Panama. And it still can be done that way. What has basically happened, and I'm not going to go into all the detail, is that there are really now only two ways to do this that are likely. One is, well, not so likely. The first one is to get a job here, a confirmed employment in Panama, and an employer, et cetera, and so forth, with a letter and everything else. Most people will be looking at the second option, which is the purchase of real estate for $200,000 or more. It does state that it does allow for bank financing. I will just mention to you that if you're, especially if you're older and a foreigner, you are going to find that getting that financing, a mortgage if you want, very difficult to get. And they normally won't do it for anything beyond 75 anyhow. So I just not count on it, okay? You can finance with an individual seller. Anybody can do that. But as far as commercial bank financing, I say it's very expensive, but hey, it's there. But so the biggest problem is that no longer can you set up a corporation, put $5,000 in the bank, and go through what had originally been the easier and least expensive way of getting the visa. Okay, so be it. Now, what does this mean? There are some people who are saying that this visa will no longer, the old visa will no longer be available after August 5th. Now, what they're talking about is that the decree that's signed by the president that announced this new visa states that it goes into effect 90 days after promulgation. I'll get back to that. And so as a result, since he signed it on May 7th, then August 5th would be 90 days later from his signature. And during that period, is the presentation by some people, is when you have to apply in order to get the visa under the old system. Well, no, it was signed, but it wasn't promulgated. It's promulgated, that is, it becomes official and it takes effect when it is published in the official Gazette, which most democracies have these. The governments print them, they publish them, they come out constantly, announcing new decisions and changes and what have you. Where does a lawyer go to find out what the story is? He goes, or she goes, to the official Gazette, and they follow it daily, and of course online or whatever, to understand what things have occurred. And when the president just can't sign something and then say nothing about it, and then somebody else has to pay a fine because they didn't know and they've broken the law, No, it has to be publicly published. And it was published in the official Gazette on the 20th of this month, last Thursday. So it will take effect on the 18th of August. That's the period you've got. This gives you 2 to 3 weeks longer a couple weeks longer to deal with it. I would just say this to you. I was always surprised at how easy, how modern, almost was a very 21st century approach they'd taken to developing this visa in the beginning. And it certainly had a good impact. I know that some people here are misunderstanding how these things work, and because they don't do any research into the markets, the foreign markets, like your own. I do, and you're a great help to me in understanding what people want and what they're doing and why they're doing it and so forth, along with all the other work that I do. I very much appreciate your input. And the problem wasn't the visa. It wasn't that people were... It wasn't just that people were getting the visa but then not having enough money to buy, and Americans weren't getting as much as they used to get for their houses, and on and on and on. That people were talking about back then, it was because the prices had gotten out of hand. And along the coast and the Boquete Volcan area, for example, in some areas it was a lack of much in the way of new supply that was out in the mountains. And the coastal area, just people got crazy, and things like how much they were paying for a square meter or an acre of raw land that happened to be on the coast. Just totally nuts. And thus the results were very high prices. And starting in 2017, I started getting messages from people saying, they're too high. Now, it depends on where you come from. This is particularly in those days for the U.S. and Canada. And it depends on where you come from in those two countries and what the strength of the Canadian dollar and a whole variety of other things. But it was in 2017 that we had more and more Northerners, particularly, who ended up renting instead of buying when they first arrived. And that has continued more in 2018, 2019. We began to feel it. And now, of course, we had the pandemic, which definitely has made everything look even worse. But the losses and the sales were coming earlier than that, and they were price related. And I kept telling people here, you just can't expect it, for people to get this much money. Now, you see the irony in all this. They were raising prices when people were just not willing to pay that because they could find prices back home that they thought were far more reasonable for what were considered to be nice places back home. Now, everything turns upside down. And the folks here in real estate are just not organized, okay? We have, like San Jose, California, I just want to take a look at that as one example on Zillow. The middle-level homes there, a sale there is well over $1 million. So we've got people, especially those of the membership here who are older, who are retired, the people who are going for that particular visa and others, who, if they sell their home, you get $1 million. You can come down here, you can buy a beautiful home for $300,000, certainly for $400,000. Under current circumstances, yes, very, very nice one to have hundreds of thousands left over. That's one little city. Well, not that little, but it's just one city, and it's not one of the largest in the U.S. So the point being is that now large numbers of Americans are buying homes at much higher prices than if you've followed it, you've seen the market go right through the ceiling. Well, that means millions of Americans are making money and getting far more for the home they sold than they expected to. Now, their problem is, how do you buy when the market's going up everywhere? Well, you don't. You leave that market, you come down here. And the beautiful opportunities have been missed over and over and over again for the last couple of years, and now particularly just fierce. And that's not going to go on forever. It never does. But that's the sort of thing. So in their minds, they're going to increase the likelihood of selling real estate in part by doing this. And what they're doing is moving forward into this time frame. Many of you who will come here earlier to start the process to avoid doing that immediately. And others, so that won't have much of an effect. And then later on, it's just the whole atmosphere. It depends on how people handle this and how they understand it. If they feel that somehow they're being pushed into a sale that they didn't think they should, and so forth. Social media is complicated. How they judge these things is always up in the air. I just thought it was sad that we, at this moment in time, when we want people to come down, we were either frightening them into coming down or discouraging them from coming down. Yeah, I mean, not good timing, not good thinking, but that's all right. My message to you is this. If it's very important for you to get in under the current set of circumstances, the current visa requirements, yeah, come on down. Get this thing started and get a hold of a lawyer. I mean, I know that many of you already have your lawyers, whatever. Just get this thing underway. And you won't have taken care of it. You have to come down. I know you may not find that convenient, and it's an additional expense, but odds were you were coming down anyhow again, but whatever. And yeah, we have all the problems with COVID and everything else. We'll hope that you can get into the country as easily as possible when you do choose to come down. There's a whole timing in this whole thing. It's just crazy. But anyhow, this is the key, is that if you can do it, do it. If you can't, what do you do? Well, what other people did before there was a friendly nations visa, they get a 6-month tourist visa, which everybody gets, and they take that's when you come in, you get 6 months. You could rent a house if you wanted to, or rent an apartment, certainly, for that period of time. You can own a business and run it if you want to in that period of time. And that has happened. In the past, particularly for people who weren't old, but who actually were somewhat younger and didn't qualify for the retirement visa, and the other visas didn't make sense for one reason or another, they would live in a tourist visa and operate business, hire people perfectly legally. There's nothing problem there. It provided employment for a lot of Panamanians, and at the same time, brought money into the community. And then every 6 months would leave the country for a few days, come back, get another visa, and do it again. Now, there's much less of that being done now. That was really removed a lot from the formula here because of the friendly nations visa. But it's there, and of course, you know what happened. They actually did it once, and I think it can be dealt with. But if we go through with this, and then they decide, oh no, you can't have more than a 60 or 90-day visa. We went through that, and we finally dealt with that pretty well. There are a lot of Canadians, bless their hearts, and Americans from the northern part who are snowbirds, and they come down 4 to 6 months a year. And they're going to have super double fits if they have to leave the country after 60 days or 90 days to come back. And they bought homes. They have them here. You want a whole bunch of homes dumped on the market and a lot of very angry people? And that's not a good way to do it. So I'm not worried about this in that sense. It's unfortunate, though, that you've lost this particular approach to getting your residency visa. That so simplified it for everybody else and got us out of this business of tourist visa followed by tourist visa. Well, we're going to have to relearn some lessons lost that people apparently have forgotten. So, for your purposes now, that's it. If you can come down and do it, and you want to do it this way, fine. If purchasing is good enough for you, but you aren't ready to do that yet, then come when you are ready, and there's nothing wrong with that. And take your time to look around. We definitely have sales going on, and we've got cheaper prices, so you would be welcome to do that. And for those who miss out on it, I'm really very sorry for that. But we can work it out. You can eventually work it out in one way or another. And I'm just sorry that we all have to go through this, and that it came at this particular time. And we don't even know what's happening to our borders from one week to the next. I mean, really, come on. But this sort of stuff happens, and I wanted to share it with you. I've been waiting for the promulgation. You don't announce these things before they come out because there's always interventions. I mean, not in this case. I mean, it would have been very unlikely, but you wait, and then you see it, and it's done, and it's there, and you know exactly what you're dealing with. So I do. Now, I'll either get back later today or tomorrow and discuss this teleworking visa that they have come up with that they just introduced. Thank you for your patience.